Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
We'll be starting in about 5 minutes to everybody that's on the line. We'll be right back. Hi, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Machine Shop Sales and Strategy, Growth Strategies webinar. We have about half of the attendees that had signed up, so I'm going to give it about another minute or two before we begin. So just hang tight and we'll get started in just a minute.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Don, can you still hear me? Okay, good quality.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody on the call today to the Machine Shop Sales and Growth Strategies webinar. This is the third webinar in a series of 4 on machine shops to talk about what we've been doing with a grant that we have received from the NIST MEP to look at 100 machine shops in the state of Georgia. And what we're going to do is focus on a topic today on sales and growth strategies. And I've got a couple slides I'd like to cover beforehand, and then I'll turn it over to Andy Helm, who'll be doing the presentation. The MEP National Network is a unique public-private partnership that delivers comprehensive, proven solutions to U.S. manufacturers, fueling growth and advancing U.S. manufacturing. We're focused on helping small and medium-sized manufacturers generate business results and thrive in today's technology-driven economy. The Georgia MEP and the MEP National Network comprises the National Institute of Standards and Technologies Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, and the 51 MEP centers are located in all 50 states and Puerto Rico and have over 1,300 trusted advisors and experts at more than 400 MEP service locations, which provides any U.S. manufacturer with access to resources they need to succeed. Okay, that's the current slide. Last year, the 51 MEP centers worked with approximately 28,000 manufacturers across the nation to create and retain 122,000 jobs, create $16 billion in new sales and retain sales, save $1.7 billion in operating expenses, and invest $4 billion back into their plans for future growth. Next slide. The Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or the Georgia MEP, is the Georgia arm of the National MEP Network and is based out of the Georgia Institute of Technology. We use a solution-based approach to help Georgia manufacturers grow their business by increasing top-line growth and reducing bottom-line cost. We have 10 offices across the state, and our team members are strategically located to reach any Georgia manufacturer within 2 hours. And if you are a Georgia manufacturer, we do have remaining assessments available for machine shops, so our local regional manager may contact you after the webinar for follow-up to introduce himself and see if you're interested in possibly conducting a machine shop assessment from which some of the data today comes from. Okay, next slide. Like many of the MEP centers across the country, we help manufacturers in their process improvement efforts with technology integration, ISO management systems, product quality, energy savings, sustainability efforts, and identifying and developing new businesses. Next slide. So today I want to introduce Andy Helm. Andy's a project manager with the Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership and a project manager and associate in our Growth and Innovation Group. Andy focuses on strategic development, effective plan execution, and practical innovation processes for our manufacturing clients. A little bit about Andy. He's got 26 years of business management experience. He was a founding member of 6 companies, and he enjoys backpacking and college football. And he's got a bachelor's in electrical engineering with an MBA from the University of Central Florida. So we are pleased to welcome Andy Helm. And Andy, you can take it away.
Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate that. And I'm excited to share some strategies for growth. This is one of the things that I'm interested in, is helping manufacturers, and in this case, machine shops, grow. So what I'm going to talk about today is on the agenda, really learning different ways to tap into new markets and new customers. You know, there isn't just one way to grow. What are the different ways to grow? And, you know, determine which strategies are right for your business. Not every strategy is a perfect fit for you. So how do we go about identifying which strategies are good, you know, for your business? And then we're going to evaluate and compare those different opportunities. We all know we have limited resources, limited time, limited people, limited money, and we can't really take advantage of all the opportunities that are in front of us. So which opportunities have the most potential, which have the least amount of risk? So we're going to have some tools that I'm going to share with you to really kind of compare apples to apples, different opportunities in front of you, so that you can make a better decision as to what you want to pursue. And then finally, we're going to share some tools about how to develop an annual growth plan. You know, if you want to grow 10%, let's say that's your goal, how do you go about doing that? And what are some concrete steps and actions that you can do to meet that goal? So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So I'd first like to address a little bit of the survey results that you guys shared with us when you registered. How do you currently generate most of your revenue? So most of you guys are job shops, which is, you know, not surprising. That's very typical and traditional for machine shops. And then, you know, we also have a big other category, which I'd be interested to know what you guys, what that means when you say other. We have our own products, custom design work, and replacement, OEM replacement parts. So that's today. And then the second question is, what are you most interested in growing additional revenue from? And the custom design work took a big jump. You can see the green part of the pie there, OEM replacement parts and our own products. But the biggest was still job shop. Still want to grow your job shop capabilities. So today, you know, the tools and the techniques that I am going to share with you will really address all of these different categories. So there are strategies, for growing your job shop business and also for new design work in your own products. So the first thing on tap is, what are the different ways to tap into new markets and new customers? So I would like to share with you what's called the Ansoff Matrix. This is a very well-known business model that helps businesses when they grow. So if you look at the different axes, the vertical axis is going to be talking about your markets. So in the bottom left, it's going to be an existing market. And as you go up, you're going to be entering new markets. So the way you use this matrix is when you have an idea that you're going to grow. Let's say you want to address this growth opportunity. That growth opportunity will typically fit into one of these 4 quadrants. And so we'll talk about that. And the horizontal axis is going to be talking about not the markets, but your products and or services. So if you have an existing product or new products will go toward the right on the axis there. So let's go ahead and start with existing markets and existing products and services. That's going to be that green quadrant, which is market penetration. And obviously, when you're talking about market penetration, this is customers you already have, customers that you're already servicing. The biggest, really lever that you can pull and is price competition. So we're just going to lay that out there and say, okay, we all understand that is one of the things that your customers are going to be most sensitive to, price competition. And then we're not going to address it anymore because that's kind of the underpinning. So price competition is king. But what can we do besides price competition? Because we don't want to compete just on price. We want to compete on other options also. So one of the things that we find is very useful is finding more customers like your best ones. So most of you guys have a handful of customers that you're like, wow, I wish I had another customer just like XYZ. How can I find another one just like that? Maybe they're easy to work with, or they give you a lot of work, or they pay on time, whatever that is. How do we find more customers like that? So there are techniques that we can use to actually find more customers like you. Developing and updating your marketing plan. What is, your strategy for going out and communicating with those potential customers, potential new people, and updating your website. Your website is your front porch, your front door. Whenever somebody hears about your company, that's the first place they're going to go to check you out, right or wrong, and they're going to judge you by how your website looks. So, that's very important to have a good first impression there and to communicate clearly what your value proposition is, what you can do, what your service is and how you can benefit that customer. So really, for market penetration, there is a lot that we can discuss with that. And so that we're really going to focus on the September 10th webinar. So if this is something that you're really interested in, we're going to do a very deep dive into strategies to kind of develop that market penetration. So I want to do some comparisons. And so we're going to compare the 4 different growth opportunity quadrants. And the first one, market penetration, it's relatively low risk. You're not spending a lot of money typically, or a lot of resources for market penetration. And the reward is relatively low. So, but I do want to say at this point, this is very important. You have to do market penetration type activities. In fact, the majority of your activities probably should be in this market penetration type outreach, because if you are not doing this and doing it well, you're going to fall behind your competition, because your competition is always going to be doing this also. So when I say the reward is low, you're typically not going to double quote your sales doing market penetration, but you need to do it because you're going to keep abreast with your different competitors. So that's kind of market penetration, that lower left quadrant. So if we want to talk about looking at this Ansoff Matrix. We're going to go from the green market penetration quadrant, go to the right. So we're going to look at product and or service development. So what that means is we're still within our existing markets. So our existing customers, our existing people that we serve, but we're going to try to offer them new products and new services. And so that's really the first takeaway, is when we talk about product development, it's not just new widgets, it's new services. There are so many opportunities in the service kind of category that many people really don't think about. And so some of the services that I think we've seen with different, machine shops that we've encountered, that this works very well. And typically service-related offerings have higher margins than product-related offerings. So that's something to think about. So customer-owned inventory. This is something where if you are able to help the customer by managing their inventory, they will pay you for that. And because they don't want the hassle, they don't want the headache. And if you are able to manage that for them, you will get a generous reward for that. Next up, other services, collaborative design with the customers. I'm sure many of you have had customers, coming to you with an idea, and it's maybe, just a scratch on a napkin, or, just a drawing that's very, not even dimensioned properly or whatever, and they need help drawing that and engineering it and getting it to a place where it can actually be manufactured. And if you are able to provide, that value added, you can charge for that in many cases. And so doing that, especially if you go into higher end design work, that's very important. We've also seen clients do prototype design work where a customer is trying to solve a specific problem. We are looking to design something that meets this criteria, but how can we manufacture it, right? So you guys are the experts in manufacturing things and to actually building things out of machining parts and whatnot. They're coming to you for that expertise. How do we actually make this? So that's some collaborative design opportunities. And then just in time deliveries. Many customers don't want to carry that inventory, and they will count on you to make their parts and deliver them when they need them, day to day. And, that is another great opportunity for service. So those are services that you can actually build upon that with your existing customers. So if any of your customers have asked you for any of these opportunities, or you feel a pain point, that might be something you can go back to them and have a conversation with them. So let's talk a little bit about new products for existing markets. I think this is something that most machine shops are very familiar with, because, if you're going to do a new product, you're going to need new equipment, typically. What does that look like? There's, all kinds of new equipment out there that you can invest in. Some that I've seen typical recently, that dual spindle turning center where you have two spindles in line. And so you'll machine one end and then sync up the two axes, and then the chuck will transfer it from one side to the other side. Then you can machine the other side. So what that does is it speeds up your operations, and you can run a high quantity of parts at very high speed without having that manual intervention. Vertical honing machine, you can get that high precision, boring those holes out at high precision. Maybe there's some clients that need that precision. So you guys are familiar with that, but new products for existing markets. And then you've got a combination of the two, kind of a product/service development opportunity, where we've seen folks that do heat treating. They bring that in, maybe special finishes, and working with unique materials. These can really, if you have the expertise and the capability to work with compacted graphite iron or medical grade plastics, titanium, or any high temp alloys, there are people who are going to come to you for that expertise. So those are some other opportunities to grow your business. being able to machine these unique materials. So when we talk about product/service development, obviously the risk is going to be a little bit higher. If you're buying some machinery, you've got that capital investment, you've got that monetary risk, right? But then the reward can also be potentially higher. So we've got medium and medium on there for product/service development. So the third option we're going to talk about is market development. So this is taking your current products, what you already make, but entering a new market. And what does that mean? Typically, what we've seen is jumping into another space that can require certification. Aerospace AS9100, automotive, the ITAR is typically required for any defense or military work. And then the certification that's really kind of the entry level is obviously the ISO 9001. And as you get into larger, more sophisticated customers, you will see these requirements coming into play. And this definitely can help you grow your business. For example, before I do the example, another one that we see for market development is expanding geographically. And what I mean by that is, if you're a machine shop who works in very small parts, and shipping is not a big issue, you just throw it on FedEx and it's not very costly, probably not a good growth opportunity. But there are some machine shops that we've encountered that they have very large, very heavy parts, hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and they're limited to this geographical area because of freight and shipping costs. So if you are able to maybe have a partnership with a 3PL or some other transportation where you can reduce your shipping costs, you can expand geographically. And so that's another kind of option if you are in very large, heavy parts. But an example of market development with AS9100, the aerospace, here in Georgia, we worked with a company and helped them get certified to this standard in 2016. And they were able to develop that business and enter that aerospace market. Not only that, but defense and military, because they had this AS9100 certification, and their sales increased by, $3.5 million. Wow, very big. And taking that and reinvesting it back into the company. So depending on, those markets and your capability, entering into that new market with a certification can, pay tremendous rewards, as we've seen in the success story here. They ended up hiring several new employees just to meet this demand. So once again, market development, kind of comparing that risk reward, I'd say medium and medium again, because if you are going to achieve one of those certifications, that takes time, that takes money, it takes, management effort to put those systems in place. But you can see the rewards, if you're able to capitalize on them, can make a big impact. So the last quadrant is really diversification, new product and new market. And this is the riskiest. This is kind of the home run. I wouldn't really recommend jumping to diversification because it's something that doesn't happen successfully as often just because of that risk. But a couple of places that we have seen machine shops do this, for example, is a machine shop we work with. They jumped into 3D printing. That it really complemented their machine, metal machining work, and they address the rapid prototyping market. So they take both of those different technologies and address the prototype market. So they're able to develop expertise in 3D printing. Design engineering for fabricated machines. So machine shop we work with, they actually have an engineering department. They've got like 4 to 5, engineers that they design these large machines for their customers. So they provide that service, and they ship internationally because they provide that value of a customized machine, and then they actually fabricate it and put it together and install it. So that's another example of diversification. And then finally, worked with a company that they actually vertically integrated with a forge to get that cast metal and then machine it. So they're able to do that all within, under one roof per se, and really drive the cost down and service that market by vertically integrating with that forge. So those are some examples of diversification that can be done. I probably wouldn't start there, but something that you guys can think about if you have an area of expertise that you're already kind of dabbling in. So finally, diversification, the risk is going to be high because by definition, you are entering an area that is an unknown to you, right? And the reward is going to be high also. So those are the 4 different kind of ways that you can potentially grow your business. Different ways. So for example, bottom left, market penetration, we talked about it's advertising, website development, that's for your existing markets, existing products, right? We go to the right there, existing markets, but now you're doing new products or services, managing customer inventory, or maybe adding a paint line, or doing fabrication and assembly, or doing heat treating. That's kind of product development. Top left, if you're going to do existing products, but going to a new market, getting those certifications, right? Aerospace, automotive. And then finally, the diversification, design, engineering, 3D printing. So next thing I'd like to talk about is the 3 horizons model. We're going to tie these 2 models together, the Ansoff model and the 3 horizons model. In this case, we've got the vertical axis is going to be profit, and then the horizontal axis is going to be time. The vertical axis can also be risk. So horizon 1 is going to be extending, defending core businesses. These are activities and opportunities to grow that are lower risk, but they don't involve as much time or money or effort. Horizon 2 is going to be building those emerging businesses, like going into adjacent markets. Right? We talked about maybe getting a certification to address the automotive industry. And then Horizon 3 is really, what is that whole new space, high risk, higher reward, they even take a longer time of diversification. So that's kind of what I'm showing here is market penetration is going to be Horizon 1, lower profit potential, but lower time and risk. When I say lower profit, once again, doesn't mean that you want to ignore it. Market penetration is probably the #1 activity that you need to be working on a day-to-day basis. Horizon 2, product development and market development would fit in that, and then diversification is going to be that Horizon 3. So we've learned the different ways to tap into new markets. So how do you know which strategy is right for your business, right? Should I do a new certification? Should I do a new product? What you need to really kind of think about is what is your unique value proposition? And this answer is going to be different for each one of you, okay? Your unique value proposition is really, why are your customers sticking with you? Why don't they go somewhere else? Because they have choices, right? So, and so the first thing that might pop into your head is price. Okay, yes, price is always going to be a factor, but let's put that out. There are other reasons, more important reasons typically that your customers come to you. Is it because when they need their parts, you deliver them on time? Right? Maybe that's the biggest problem they have. Or is it the quality? We've worked with machine shops who have a terrible on-time rate, but the customer sticks with them because their quality is excellent and their parts are right every time, all the time. And that's not to say you don't need to work on your on-time shipment, right? But there's a unique value proposition that your customers are sticking with you specifically for, right? So what is it? What is that? this is a deep question. Kind of think about, why are your customers sticking with you? And so what you can do is to grow is, what have you no bid because you didn't have that capability? And seek opportunities with other shops. So you've had quotes or people come solicit you for work, and you were not able to really service that or provide a good product. Maybe your pricing wasn't in line, or you didn't have the tolerances on your machines, or you just didn't have the capacity. You didn't have enough machine shop time to get the parts out. All right, seek out those partnerships where your unique value propositions complement each other, and we have successfully seen machine shops do this in a non-competitive manner. Right, so if your unique value propositions are exactly the same, that's probably not an ideal partnership opportunity. But find somebody who kind of complements what you guys do, and see if there's anything that you can share jobs with. And this is a real life example of actually 3 machine shops working together, one doing precision grinding, one doing heat treating, and one doing laser cutting of parts to deliver an OEM replacement product to an industry. And so each shop was leveraging their unique value proposition. And so you can grow your business by seeking those partnerships. Another way to grow your business is by using capacity brokers. So this was interesting. If you have excess capacity, and if you're efficient at kind of running one-off jobs, just you're really quick at setup, you have good programming guys, CAD CAM guys, and you can just hit the job and be real efficient and go. And if you're okay with not interacting with the end client, these capacity brokers or on-demand manufacturing might be a good fit. How does this work? Basically, the on-demand capacity brokers, they have a website, right? The customer uploads a 3D CAD model to the website. Then this website, they've got some quoting software that computes the cost, generates a quote, sends that back to the potential client. And at that point, when they generate the quote, it's typically going to be about 20% more expensive than what a traditional machine shop could make that part for, because they're going to take their cut really for identifying, kind of being the broker, the matchmaker. So it's not the cheapest option for clients, but it's a really convenient option for the client. So then the customer order is shared with a matched machine shop, and this is where you guys can potentially come in, being those machine shops available with excess capacity. And at that point, the machine shop decides to accept the job or not. So this is the capacity broker or on-demand manufacturing model. Where do you sign up for that? A couple of examples here: exometry.com or fictive.com. They both have options to sign up as a partner. I would definitely take an opportunity to look at their websites, see what they're capable of, and see if that's something that would make sense for you to actually grow your sales. So now I'd like to talk about, what are those different growth opportunities? What does it look like when you can't chase every opportunity? That's one of the things that we find is a big failure point, is by chasing too many opportunities. What are the best ones? I'm going to introduce a tool, and this is an Excel that we will be sending in a follow-up email, so you don't have to worry about taking too many notes here. You'll get this. But this is for, let's say, growing your business with a new product. Okay? And so in this case, this is going to be purchasing a new piece of equipment. In the top left, you can see where it says dual spindle turning center. What customer problem does it address? Obviously, it gives you a competitive cost structure and the target market size. So this is going to be specific to your company, right? is, you've seen in the last year that you've had $2 million in lost bids or no bids just because you're not competitive on price on these certain types of parts, right? Maybe you've got, slower, older machining centers. So the key differentiator, faster part throughput, and, some type of machine utilization. So what we want to do is really compare the cost opportunity, and the bottom line is going to be down here in the bottom right, what we call a risk-adjusted NPV, and NPV, all that means is net present value. And what we're going to really try to do is compare different ideas in today's dollars, right? What's the value of this idea in today's dollars, taking everything into account. So using a financial analysis, the non-recurring investment, let's say, this turning center cost $250,000, and year one volume, let's say it's about 100,000 parts that you think you could, you've lost, you could address 100,000 parts with this. Put in your net price, your manufacturing cost, and your margin. I use 10% margins here, just because that's really typical. The manufacturing cost is going to include your overhead, whatever you pay for your rent and your office staff and everything. Okay, so that's the $2, 10% margin is all the cost, 10%. And let's say for the first year, it's going to cost, new SG&A, which means new selling, general, and administrative expenses. It's going to cost you $1,000 to kind of get the word out, update your website, train your salespeople if you have them. What this new capability is, maybe going to a trade show and making, updating your trade show materials. So the Excel has a formula in here, so it'll calculate it all. And it says, okay, for year one, you're going to have $199,000 in profit. Okay. And you kind of do the same thing for year two and year three, put in the numbers and kind of get these numbers. And where the net present value comes into play, it's going to add up, those profit numbers, subtract your investment, your $250,000 investment, and take into account this 4.5% time value of money. If you had put your money in a CDs or in the bank and just got 4.5% interest, okay, this gives you the opportunity cost of money. So the net present value is going to be $313,000 in today's dollars for this idea. Now, each idea has a different amount of risk. So we're going to take the risk into account with the risk analysis. So in this case, 100% confidence factor equals no risk. So we've got some risk guidelines that we're going to kind of show you. So market risk. How do you address market risk? So in this case, if we're doing, going to put in a new machining center for your current market, right? We're talking about current market, but new product. You don't really have customers awaiting delivery. You don't have pre-orders or contracts, so that's not it. You have good customer feedback, but it's not minimal competitive threat. This is a very competitive, cost competitive environment, right? High volume, low cost. So it would really be a risk guideline between 50 and 75%. You've got good feedback, but it's highly competitive, right? So that's where that risk guideline comes into play. So that's where we got this 50% here. And then how do we calculate the technical risk? Well, the technical risk here is nothing new currently in production. Well, that's not true. You don't have that machine currently in production. Proven technology, but not currently in production. You don't have that technology, so it's not proven to you. Maybe proven in the industry, but maybe not proven to you. So probably a testing verification is completed. You've talked to the sales reps. You've maybe seen a machine at their demo center. There's a clear implementation strategy. It makes sense. You should be able to kind of, have the folks on hand to put this into play. So that's going to be between 50 and 70%. So, I picked a 60. So once again, the Excel is going to multiply those two together. When you multiply percentages, it gets smaller, so it goes down to 30% risk factor. So you're going to take this 313,000 net present value times 30% and get a risk-adjusted net present value of approximately $94,000. So I want to emphasize here, this is not a prediction that you'll make $94,000 with this idea. That's not the case because there's too many variables that can go one way or the other. What we're trying to do is compare ideas. So one business brief by itself is not that useful, but they start becoming useful when you compare multiple ideas together. Now the risk-adjusted NPVs can be compared to each other because they have more value relative as opposed to absolute. I hope that makes sense. So it's really more about relative, which one has a higher number as opposed to what the number is. So let's do another example. This one is a market. Okay, so we're going to enter a new market. In this case, we want to get AS9100 certification. And in this case, 150 million a year in machine parts. This is the whole huge, big market, right? Not what you can address, but the big aerospace market, let's say. So we'll go into the financial analysis. There is no non-recurring investment. You're not going to have to buy any machinery because you already have the machinery in this case. What you're going to probably end up spending money on is where it says new SG&A. It might cost you a significant amount of money to go through the auditing and to achieve that certification. So we've captured that in year one, about $20,000 in year one. So we take the market size, and this is times 1,000, so this is 150 million. We're going to penetrate this by 0.1% because your shop isn't going to be able to address a lot, and you're going to get $150,000 in new sales. Okay, margins are going to be higher because aerospace demands high quality, and that's what the AS9100 helps to deliver. And you get higher margins. So your profit for year one, let's just say we estimate it's $32,000. And then year two goes up, year three, and once again, we do kind of the same thing. Add those 3 years up and subtract the non-recurring investment, which in this case is zero. So we have a $215,000 net present value. What does the risk look like? So this is a new market, right? So this is a well understood adjacent market with minimal competitive threat. So let's just say in your instance, you're going to the AS9100 market. There's only 2 or 3 other machine shops that can address this at your local level. So it's not that, it's not highly competitive. It's not like they're bidding out 10 different shops. So it's between 75 and 99. I'll put an 80 in there. Technical risk. In this case, you guys aren't buying any new machinery. You're already doing it. You're already meeting the tolerances. You already are doing all the work. So technically you understand it. It's 100%, and you're not. It's really more about the certification. So that's where we put a technical risk of 100. Multiply those two together, you get the 80%. Then you take the 80, multiply that by the 215. You get a risk-adjusted NPV of $172,000. So now you can kind of start to see the comparison between the different ideas. One going into a new market, one investing into new equipment. So that's a tool that you're going to get today, or when we send out a follow-up email, is how to evaluate those different growth opportunities. Finally, how do we develop that annual growth plan? So what does 2019 look like? So this is a good example of a growth plan that we'll also share with you. Lines 6, 7, and 8, where we have an activity for a website update and some trade shows. So the way this works is these top 3 are going to be Horizon 1, right? That market penetration type activities. So let's say a website update, you estimate it's going to bring about 25,000 in new sales. And every time you go to a trade show, let's say you get 40,000 in new orders from that trade show. So that's what you get for those 2 trade shows. So you have an unadjusted number. Now we're also going to add some probabilities on here, right? So we look at the risk probabilities down here in the bottom left. You know, the website, pretty straightforward, and every time you go to a trade show, it's not a lot of risk there. So we have absolute certainty at 90%. I love it, right? 90% is absolute certainty because nothing is ever 100%. So we will count those at 90% probability. That discounts them a little bit. So it looks like by doing our Horizon 1 activities, we can grow our business by approximately $94,000, $95,000. Those are the activities. So what about the other activities that we talked about, right? The dual spindle turning center. Bringing that over, the risk-adjusted NPV, remember, was about $94,000. What's the risk on there? You know, with that dual spindle turning center, you know, you guys are this is your business. You know how to use that machine. You commission new machines, so it shouldn't be a big issue. A few unknowns, but not a big risk. So 75%. But if you're going to go into the AS9100 market, you know, that's really there's more unknowns because you don't know what those customers require. It's a different industry, different market, so you're going to have to feel your way around a little bit more. Many unknowns, right? 50%. So we're going to discount that a little bit more. So for the Horizon 2 type activities, right, new products and new markets, looks like you could count on about $156,000. If you add those two together, 94 and 156, you got a potential of $250,000 in growth. So if you have a $2.5 million business right now, and you want to grow 10%, here's some potential ideas. Right? This is your growth plan to grow 10%. So you can use this kind of as a benchmark to help you allocate your activities. That's really kind of closing out. I will open it up for any questions right now. Hopefully you guys have some good ones as to how to use these tools and what we can do.
Thank you, Andy. It was a great presentation. I'll leave it open for a minute or two for questions. We can see them on the chat line.
And while we're waiting on the questions, I will do a shameless marketing plug for our next webinar, how to take that proactive approach to marketing. This is going to be a good one that has a lot of activities in that H1 type outreach and growth. So definitely sign up for that. And if you are in Georgia, we have some no-cost machine shop assessments where we will be able to come in, give you a third-party unbiased view of your operations and give you some really detailed suggestions to grow your business also. So we would love to do that if you are in Georgia. Any questions?
I've unmuted everybody, so you should be able to talk, I think. If not, you can submit it through the chat, the question. Last chance for any questions.
So I don't know if you can hear me. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Is this Heather?
This is Heather, yes. How successful are the capacity brokers, and is there a yearly fee? I mean, it sounds like a really great idea to me, but sometimes those sometimes aren't great ideas. So are they truly successful, and is it really something that we should look into?
That's a great question, and we haven't really, we haven't interacted with them because we're a Georgia MEP. So you might want to talk to some other folks out there. Now, I do know that they are successful in the big picture because it is a business model that is relatively new, probably within the past 3 to 5 years. And so there are people that this actually fits and it makes sense for. So it's not going to be for everybody, obviously. So to answer your question, yes, I think that it does make sense, but it has to be a fit for you. So you really have to take that into consideration. You know, if you're the type of machine shop that is able to really do those setups quickly, you have that capacity available, and you have guys that can jump on a job, maybe. But if not, then it might not be a good fit.
Okay. And so we're ISO 9001 to the 15 standard, and I didn't know how much more difficult is it to become AS 9100.
Don, you want to address that one? Because I'm not sure.
There are some additional requirements, but if you have the base ISO 9000, it's going to build on that model. So
Okay.
it's not. There are some additional requirements, but it's not insurmountable.
Okay.
I would say. Are you in what state are you in?
We're in West Virginia.
Yeah, I would. Are you familiar with your local MEP there?
Actually, I'm on the board for the MEP.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I work very closely with them. Yes.
Yeah, I would say check with them, but it's not a huge hurdle. I would say starting off not having 9000 would be, but it's not a huge hurdle.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the webinar.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I sent one in over the just a question. I typed it in, but you mentioned the market potential for AS 9100. What about ITAR? Any feel for what that certification could do for a machine shop?
As far as volumes, I'm not that sure, but I do know typically if you're going to do defense or military, applications for customers, they're probably going to want that. So when you get those big contracts like that, what they're looking for, what your customer is looking for, is to kind of check the box, because they've got a procurement checklist that they're going down. Is my vendor ITAR certified? Is he AS 9100? And if you're not, you're just not in the running from day one, right? So what that does is it's going to open up, you to be on a list of, to be able to address more, RFQs or RFPs. What that is, I don't know. We have here in Georgia, we've got our government contracting folks who can kind of really help you with that and give you some more details on that. But I wouldn't know per se.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got a few other questions. I'll run down the list. Yes, the 2 previous seminars can be accessed. You can get to them through the Georgia MEP website, gamep.org, and the other seminars are posted on the website. And a few other questions I'll address. Andy, are there other ideas for H2 and H3?
Other ideas for H2 and H3. I think off the top of my head, it's just one of those creative things, especially in the service industry. If you are able to provide services to your customers, not necessarily a widget, listen to their pain points, right? Because they're coming to you and they're saying, hey, can you do this? Or I've got a problem with this. And, traditionally we're like, oh, I can't do that, I'm sorry. And you just kind of move on.
Okay, thank you, Andy. What type of advertising or marketing do you suggest for machine shops? Andy, can you hear me? Andy, are you there? I think we might have lost Andy. I will attempt to get some of these other, we got a few more questions. I'll attempt to get a few other ones answered individually. I'd like to thank you all for today's webinar, and we're going to be sending out today's slides in a follow-up email along with worksheets that Andy mentioned on the net present value and the risk to get you started. And there, as he mentioned, are still seats available in the last webinar and within the series. So please register for that. When you get your email, you'll see the link in that for the last webinar too. And it's also in the presentation. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and we'll try to get those last few questions answered if we can. We have your name and the question, so there were a few more I missed for Andy, but we'll try to pick up on those. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and we will see you next month. Thank you very much. Andy? Hey, I yeah, I don't know what happened. I wasn't touching anything. Yeah, I basically said, well, I think. Oh, you did? Okay.